Hello, hello, my lovely sewing enthusiasts, and welcome back to another video. Yeah, you really gave me some lovely feedback. Thank you so much for that. On how to make a Vivienne Westwood corset out of a little t-shirt, and you seem to enjoy it. And when I asked you if you want to see how to make the pattern, you said yes. Several of you actually said yes. So as promised, here's the video on how to create your own Vivienne Westwood Style corset with your pattern measurements. Okay, now I've slipped into something more bodycon. I'm going to wrap myself now into this tape. Use this type of paper to wrap yourself around first, and then you wrap the tape. I also found that pinning the paper to the undershirt you're wearing really helps in keeping everything nice and in place. The whole process looks pretty messy and it isn't really that fun, so if you have the chance to grab a friend, do so, please. Especially when it comes to the back side. Yeah, you see, it's really not that easy to do by yourself. Anyways, when the vertical lines were done, I went on to wrap my whole body around into horizontal tape lines. Just turn yourself into a nice little parcel here, okay? After wrapping the bodice part, grab a piece of silk paper and put it where you want your strap to go. And secure that one also with the tape. And again, it's really not that easy on the back side. Yes, so now I have this kind of taped out. It's nice and snug to my body. And now it's time to draw out the style lines of the corset. You can basically draw out any corset you like at this point, so keep your references handy, and I was of course looking at something like this. As for the back, if you're struggling like me, don't worry. Just try to catch your center back point and where you want your back piece to end, and the rest will be done later in the flat pattern phase. When you're done drawing your corset lines, carefully cut yourself out of the paper in the front. Use safety scissors and only catch the paper and tape, not your top, obviously. Okay, so this doesn't look like much, but you have to trust the process, girl. We'll get there. First, let's take care of the front piece. You may notice it doesn't want to lay flat because it's still keeping the shape of your shape, you know. And I'm so sorry for this, but my camera started focusing on my head at this point. I hope you can still understand what I'm doing here. So yeah, I make 3 lines going from the bust point, one that goes into the side seam and 2 going into the neckline. Cut them open and then you can lay them flat so your pattern piece opens up on the neckline and is closed again at the side seam cut. And then I just copy the new shape into my paper and even out the curves with a French curve ruler. And then it's time to cut the rest of the pattern. So for the back piece, as you may notice in the reference photos, the back is cut quite high, so I elongated that one to a length of around 30 centimeters or 11.5 inches in total. And also I eyeballed the width of the back piece so it looks proportional to the rest of the pattern. So in my case it was around 6 centimeters or 2.5 inches wide. And then you can cut out your newly drawn back piece and cut off the strap. Looking back at the reference photos, we can see that the strap is not sewn onto the neckline, but it ends a bit inside of the back piece. So that's where we cut it off, and also that's where it's then marked on the back piece. And don't you forget to mark that notch, it's quite important for the sewing process later on. And at this point I decided to cut out the pieces. I cut them out actually without the seam allowance because this will make it easier to work with later on. And I usually only add the seam allowances in the end on the finished pattern pieces. The side piece will be made out of mesh fabric and it will be cut on the bias. So there I just heartlessly flatten it out to the shape, no mercy here. Here again we go through the same process, copy the shape, then smooth it out on the curves and cut it out. But we have to be aware of the seams where the side part connects to the front and the back. They have to fit, so measure them out, adapt the length and make sure they have the same length. So as mentioned before, the side part will be cut on the bias. So first I mark out where the side seam would be and then I make a 45-degree angle to indicate the bias grain line. And when you put them together, also make sure to mark out the notches on both sides at the same time. and this will ensure you can put those pieces back together correctly when you're sewing them. The strap looks really messy here, and I decided to just draw it out completely anew, but this messy piece here still holds very important information, mainly the length of your strap. So yeah, I measured it out, I noted the length and just made a simple rectangle in that same length. Mine was 31 centimeters long or 12.5 inches, but yours might be a different length depending on your torso. Then I just squared off the ends and cut it out roughly. The ends of the strap need to match the seams where the strap connects with the back and front pieces, and the easiest method is just to mark it out by putting the pieces together the way they would be sewn into each other. Also, where the back of the strap connects with the back piece, you also mark out the notch, and this will also guide you later on when you're sewing, because you will know exactly the orientation of your strap. And you see here, I didn't want to get confused with the strap side, so I basically folded it exactly how it would go into the front piece. What you then need to do is just to match the curves a bit and cut it out, and voila, you have your strap. Friends, we made amazing progress actually. We have the first version of our pattern, and we're going to test it now with a mock-up. To keep the mock-up as realistic as possible, but also as low effort as possible, I'm going to simulate the reinforced front sections with a piece of cardboard. I'm going to use this kind of cheap fabric that I don't really care about to do the mock-up. And yeah, I'll see you on the cutting table. It's time to cut, so lay out the pieces, mark out the lines, and then also draw the seam allowances on the fabric itself. And for the first iteration on the mock-up, I recommend to be generous with the seam allowances. On the side seams, I made it around 2 centimeters, 1 inch, and 1 centimeter, half an inch on the center front where the zip goes. You don't need seam allowances on the hem or the armhole parts, and also not on the neckline. The strap needs seam allowances on the ends and also up until the backside notch, which is again 1 centimeter or half an inch. As fast as possible, I recommend to copy the cardboard pieces from the cut parts with the seam allowances. Alright, now we're ready for the toile. I suggest you get yourself any old kind of dividable zipper. It has to be able to open on the bottom. And it doesn't even have to be the proper size, it just has to be long enough. And we're going to use it to just quickly put on and off your mock-up. And I'm going to put it in the front because it's much easier to zip it up in the front. But later you will have a pattern where you can just adjust however you would like. So you can adjust it to have the zipper in the back or to have the zipper in the front. So exciting! It's time to put the first version of the pattern to life. And first step is basting the cardboard pieces into the fabric so they stay together. And as the second step, put in the zipper. And now we just have to connect the side seams, the back parts, and the straps. And try it on! Okay, let's try her on. Alright, so first try on. Pretty bad. So I see, okay, it needs to be taken in here. We need more space here. And also I don't like that it's open this much. So I have to do those adjustments and try it on again, do more adjustments. It might take a while and it might test your patience. Rome wasn't built in a day, and good things take time. So if your corset doesn't snatch you up as it should, try to make the side part smaller where the side seam would be. For the first fitting, just pin a new line. And because the armhole was quite spacious, I fill it in with some scrap pieces to draw out the new armhole shape. I just pinned them on and wasn't too precious about the looks. Here I am with the first set of changes, but still I think I need to do a few more adjustments. So I think I have to go in, because this is kind of loose here, so I need a little bit of, I need to close this gap here. Something like this. And then I can mark my new bust line somewhere here. Maybe I can also make it a little bit tighter here, because right now I don't like how it's kind of gaping open here. I think I still need to make the shoulder strap a little bit shorter. I actually quite like the line that is being formed here, so normally I would just draw out the new underarm line, but I don't think this is necessary. But here this needs to go in a little bit. This is still, there's still like a little bit of a hole I don't like, and I'm going to close it up. Yeah, see, I want a little bit more of a pushed in effect, so I have to also make this part, push it in from the side a little bit more. So, and here I just mark out the new neckline to get a nice new curve. If you don't have a friend and you just need to do it yourself, take it off. That's why we have the zipper in the front, so it's easier. Take it off, put the changes you think you need, try it on again, repeat over and over until you're happy. And I think I am quite happy. Now let's see for the next iteration of this fitting process. And since we have to do a bigger rehaul of the pattern, I just decided to cut this one open and lay it flat. If you also decide to get rid of a gaping neckline, you can reduce the length by making a line into the front side seam, make both sides overlap at the marked out lines, and then of course the neckline has a gap which you have to redraw, and also the side seam will have an edge which also needs to be smoothed out. I hope you see the method. I again copy the new piece onto the paper, draw out the lines and curves with the French curve, and make that my new pattern piece. Then again you have to double check your strap and make sure it fits the front and back pieces, and if it doesn't, don't despair. Just slap a bit of paper underneath and redraw the line. As with the first pattern, you also have to mark out the notches where the front and the back pieces connect to the side pieces, and of course make sure the seams have the same length. If you had made a lot of bigger changes in the structure like I did, I would suggest it's most useful to make completely a new second mock-up. And make sure you mark out the first and the second iteration so you don't get confused which one's which. And then of course the new pattern pieces also need to be put into a second mock-up. Alright friends, this is the second mock-up now. So I think it fits much better now. There's still a few things I want to improve upon, like make this curve go in a little bit so it doesn't make this kind of weird angle here and here, so I kind of push it in a little bit like this. When you are finally done with all the fittings and you feel like, yes, this piece fits me nicely, fits me like a glove, I'm happy with it, then all that's left to do is make this pattern into a proper pattern with all of the markings and all of the things that you need to make a proper corsage. So I'm going to show you how to do it right now. The pattern needs to be redrawn one last time, but with the seam allowances this time. Let's start with the front piece. It needs seam allowances at the shoulder seam, the center front, the neckline, and the side seam where the side pieces connects to the front pieces. I just call it the side seam. Also, it's important to mark out the center front and the grain line. As for the markings on the pattern, I like to put the date of the pattern for ease of reference. Then you also write which piece it is, the front, to which garment it belongs, the corsage, and also I like to write out that this piece has the zip at the front. And of course we need to write out how many times we need to cut it, so in this case we cut it 2 times out of the self fabric and 2 times out of a stiff canvas. Same with the back piece. That one needs only seam allowances at the side seam. It is cut on the fold, so write that out as well. And it needs to be cut once out of the self fabric and once out of the stiff canvas. In the previous shots you see the seam allowance, which was a mistake on my side, so I'm cutting it off to correct it. This edge doesn't need a seam allowance because it will be enclosed with bias tape. Moving on to the facing. This one is basically a copy of the upper part of your front piece. It has the same seam allowances. I extended mine to be 9 centimeters or around 3.5 inch in the front, and it is cut 2 times out of the self fabric and 2 times out of fusible interface. And the lower curve of the facing should be a really nice and pretty one because it's later enforced with some boning, and you see it actually from the front as the second horizontal line across the bust. Next up is the side part. This one will be cut out of stretch mesh fabric. fabric and out of the self fabric on a bias. So first we indicate the direction of the stretch of the match right across the waist, and from that one we determine the 45-degree angle for the bias cut. And it's cut 2 times out of the self fabric and 2 times out of mesh. This one needs seam allowances on the side seams, and for the shoulder strap, armhole and hemline are left without the seam allowance here. Last one is the strap piece. The grain line of the strap is perpendicular to the line where the shoulder seam would be, and it needs a seam allowance all around and will be cut 4 times out of the self fabric and 2 times out of fusible interfacing. A corsage is not a corsage without the boning, right? So we need to indicate where to put the boning pieces on the pattern, and I suggest you just look at the reference material for this one. I kind of freestyled it here using the boning that I have on hand as a guide. And what you need to know, both side seams need to be reinforced and the zip has a bone right next to it as well. In the front, I started with the front zip bone and then went onto the upper boning that supports the curve of the neckline, which is horizontal. And it needs to be pretty much right below the seam allowance. And the rest of the bones I just kind of freestyled, yeah, with the help of the super useful French curve ruler here. And of course the reference material. It's important to have the boning marked out on your canvas pieces when you're sewing them, so your front needs holes, a lot of those holes. So if you want to make a few of those corsages, they're also really useful as an understructure for draped dresses, for example. I would recommend you make the front and back pieces out of cardboard. So yeah, drill out the holes, I use this awl here, and then cut the notches out as little triangles. Now I also promised to show you how to make the other pattern variation, the one with the zip in the back. So for the front piece, it's basically the same thing, just without the seam allowance in the front. And it's really useful to have that one piece as a whole. So here's a little trick on how to copy the sides exactly. You just roughly cut it out, fold it over and secure it with a few pins, and then you just cut the paper and the notches out. And voila, you have the whole front piece. That one you now cut out once, out of the self fabric and out of the canvas. For the back, you just add seam allowances on the back where the zip goes, and you cut that one out twice out of canvas and out of the self fabric. And don't forget to mark them as the pieces for the zip in the back version so you don't get confused. And there you go, your very own corset pattern with your own measurements. Enjoy! And that's, my friends, is how you make a pattern for your Vivienne Westwood Style corsage. It was a bit more on the technical side of things, pattern making and stuff like that, but I hope you still got value out of it. So let's be friends, maybe on Instagram. I have a link to my profile in the description. And this is where we can connect and I can see your creations, or just let me know in here in the comments or something, because I'd really love to see yours. Also, if you try to make one yourself and you get maybe a little bit stuck somewhere in the process, don't fret, just let me know in the comments. I will collect the feedback and make a video, like a Q&A of your problems, so we can solve them together. Okay friends, so that's it from my side. I see you in the next video and I wish you happy creating and making. Bye!